since everything an actor does is relationship building, networking, at least in some part or parcel. So we say these are talent and educational, which they are, but then everybody can go, well, they're also networking. The actors also want something. And I say, duh, that's true of everything an actor does.
You're listening to Inside Acting, a podcast dedicated to demystifying the inner and outer game of success in the entertainment industry. I'm Trevor Algott, and coming up today in episode 288, part 2 of our unique casting director roundtable interview, in which we sit down with LA-based casting directors Alan Hooper, Caroline Liem, and Jane Jenkins to dig further into the ever-evolving legal side of this casting workshop issue. And today, Alan, Caroline, and Jane discuss their motivation to facilitate and their mission in facilitating their own casting director workshops, a few more details surrounding the city's workshop investigation, as well as some of the nuances of the charges being brought, and perhaps a different way to frame what workshops are and can accomplish for actors. Support for this episode of Inside Acting is brought to you in part by Rehearsal Pro, the essential app for actors, which is now available in a brand new version in the iTunes App Store. So, if you want to learn your lines, if you want to be off book for your auditions, if you want to explore your character, make really strong choices, and do a whole lot more, go to rehearsal.pro/IAP right now, where you can learn all about the great new features in this newest version of Rehearsal, the groundbreaking app designed by actors for actors, and download it for yourself. It's an essential tool that every actor should have in their toolbox. That's rehearsal.pro/IAP. Support for this episode of Inside Acting is brought to you by PrintHeadshots.com, superior headshot printing. At PrintHeadshots.com, all orders include free shipping, free retouching, free layouts, free proofs, and no hidden fees. You don't pay a dime until you approve your proofs. And you can use promo code IA, that's IA as in Inside Acting, to get $10 off your order. Most orders arrive within just a day or two. So for superior printed headshots with unparalleled turnaround time, visit printheadshots.com and be sure to use promo code IA for $10 off. Printheadshots.com. Superior headshots at the lowest prices, guaranteed. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 288. Trev here. AJ was actually off in Natureland, during the period of time in which we were going to be recording this episode, and so he sent in a recording from the trail, and I love these dispatches, so I'm going to play that for you in just a second. But before we jump into the interview, I just want to kind of say something about the nerve that we seem to have touched on, the reaction that we seem to have sparked with this interview series, this casting director workshop roundtable. Next week, we're going to be reading a short rebuttal response from a respected and very loved past guest, and then we're going to move on, because our aim with this podcast has always been to empower and inform the community, not to take sides. And we're the first to admit it's not always easy to do that, but we do strive to maintain an unbiased approach with our interviews, especially when it comes to the really sensitive and divisive legal or political stuff like this. We are not perfect. We are also the first to admit that, but we hope that our past episodes and interviews about this particular issue, this workshop debate thing, and all the various pros and cons that come with it, and of course, all the unfolding events as of late, we hope that our coverage, for lack of a better term, has been worthy of that aim to empower and inform actors, not necessarily to tell people what to do or what side to take. Of course, we always welcome your emails, your voice memos and messages, your thoughts, your tweets, everything, all of it. We welcome you sharing all of that. Don't worry about filtering it or anything like that. We do, I should note, consciously avoid flame wars, anything that devolves into name calling or shaming. anything like that is not really our style. So if you bring that to the table, we're probably going to ignore you. But we do welcome intelligent, considerate discussion of anything and everything that we have ever talked about here on the show, not just this issue. So please feel free to share your thoughts. Next week, we will be returning to a focus on working artists making art and the pursuit of making a living making that art. And we've got some really great interviews in the pipeline, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Also, I want to offer a quick shout out to all of our supporting and contributing members. If you have ever tweeted kind words about this podcast or left us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or any of the places that we are, or if you've emailed us just to say thanks or shared your journey or success stories, or even if you've chipped in a few bucks, or in many people's cases, more than a few bucks. We've gotten some wonderfully generous contributions over the years. I just want to take a minute here just to say thank you. Seriously, like from the bottom of our hearts, we so appreciate all of your support, so incredibly, very much. And the contributions that you guys send in, the monetary, nickel and dime and dollar contributions that you share with us, that you contribute to help offset production costs and keep the lights on here at Inside Acting HQ. It means everything to an indie podcast like us. It's one of the reasons we've been able to keep the show relatively ad-free and gone really light on some of the stuff that a lot of other productions use to sort of, make money doing this. It's never been our aim to make this a full-time gig or anything like that, but it is really nice to be able to offset, like I said, those production costs. And you guys have been so wonderful about keeping us going by helping us pay for those production costs. So thank you. You guys know who you are, and we know who you are too. Thank you so very much. All right, so AJ called in from the trail.
Hey guys, it is day 3, or I guess the evening of day 3 of an epic, multi-day, many-mile backcountry backpacking trip that Jasmine and I are on. Basically 4 days and 3 nights out in the backcountry of Sequoia National Park and Kings Canyon National Park, and the surrounding wilderness areas. It has been an amazing experience, very trying on the body, physically and mentally, but I'm so grateful for it. And it brings a lot of clarity, not having cell phone reception and, the passivity of reacting to an inbox. It's not exactly relaxing. I wouldn't call it that. You're very focused and you're very, you're always moving, and you're typically always moving towards an objective. Like a place to camp or something like that, which is, I think, really fascinating. And the level of focus that we achieved from day to day was pretty amazing. I mean, we would stop to take breaks and filter water and eat food and stuff, but when we were hiking, it was, that's all we were doing was hiking and looking at the beauty surrounding us, which is unbelievable. Simply unbelievable. When we got to the top of this one pass, I nearly cried because it was just so breathtaking. I definitely got goosebumps. And meanwhile, back in La La Land, I get to put myself on tape as soon as I get back for, this is my second time auditioning for Hamilton, for the second national tour that will be going out, I believe sometime next year. They've always planned on having, a sit in the big cities like New York and Chicago, and then 2 simultaneous national tours. And who knows, maybe they'll end up doing international stuff as well. But this time it's for a role as opposed to general male ensemble, which is cool. It's for George Washington, which I don't know if I'm completely suited for that, but it's going to be fun. And I've been practicing a little bit while I've been out here on the trail, which is just ridiculous. Rapping and kind of singing at a low volume. So anyway, greetings from the middle of nowhere. And I'm excited to get back and receive and send all of your interest via, social media and email. In other words, if you have any questions about this kind of stuff, feel free to reach out to me. And I'll see you on the trail.
I'll actually be seeing AJ tonight, so I'll have to ask him how that meeting went, that audition, that on-tape meeting, if you can still call it that. And I love those dispatches. Thanks for sharing that, AJ. And we do have some really great questions that have been sent in by listeners over the past few weeks that we've got on the outline. We're really stoked to respond to them, but I'm going to save those for when AJ and I are both back live here on the next episode. So without further ado, part 2 of our casting workshop roundtable with Caroline Liem, Alan Hooper, and Jane Jenkins. Enjoy this, guys, and we will catch you on the other side. Caroline, I know we're going to lose you in a few minutes here because I know you've got a boogie, but I wanted to ask you guys before we do it, what is your, because Alan, you just said that, the sort of presumption that we go to these workshops to find talent, that's the only reason is ridiculous. And you just talked about how sort of overwhelming it can be sometimes almost to have online casting practice. I mean, 4,700 roles or 4,700 submissions for a single role. I want to ask you guys, what is your main motivation then for doing workshops?
Well, I can only speak for myself. I did start out as an actor, and I was and I had great training. I went to the High School of Performing Arts, studied at Berghoff Studios in New York with great teachers. And then I walked in the first time I ever met a casting director. I could hardly talk. Every ounce of saliva evaporated from my mouth. My heart was beating so hard that I thought it could be seen through my shirt. I literally sat in a chair and held onto my knees because they were trembling so much, so that trying just to remain like a calm, sane human being. I don't even remember the name of the person that I met. And I see actors, for 40 years I have seen actors walk into my office in a very similar state very frequently. And of course, you're not going to get the job because you can't breathe, you can't think, you can't sit, you can't be a person. Therefore, you can't be an actor. And I just felt that I have the time at this point in my life to share my experience of 40 years to enlighten a lot of these younger kids, especially younger actors, who think their whole lives depend on this meeting, and to inform them that nobody's life depends on any of it. And if you walk in just to introduce yourself as who you are, that's all you need to do. So I've never, ever hired an actor from any workshop. I have helped a lot of actors who have gone on and been really successful, but that was never my intent to hire actors. I just felt that I have 40 years of really valuable experience, and I know what it was like to walk into the room and be on the other side of the desk. And I just wanted to calm people down and tell them to rip.
Yeah. And for me, similar to Jane, I graduated from college and had an audition and a callback for a pretty big feature film. And I did not know how to be in that room. And it was very awkward. It was very uncomfortable, and it was not collaborative by any means, because I didn't know how to show up for myself in that room. Mm-hmm. And so I left that callback and I called my professor and I said, you did not prepare me for this. I'm going to go learn how to do this and I'm going to come back and teach it to your students. And that's what I did. So I got into casting from there, and then it's become a mission of sorts, not intentionally, but it's fallen into that. I talk at a lot of universities. I co-founded an education company. It's now a former education company for me, but my business partner is still there, we go into colleges, we go into high schools, and we talk about what these transitions are and how do you prepare for this audition room and how do you prepare to be the best you in the room, sharing who you are with material that maybe you identify with and maybe you don't identify with, but how do you bring the best you in? And from that, I became faculty at Pace University. So I'm big on education. I have a lot of degrees. And in the middle of that, I've been casting for 18 years. So I'm all about the give back. You don't make a lot of money teaching, you know? So, and with regards to the workshops themselves, I mean, they're helpful. We've been talking about this for almost the last hour is, you know, it's all about educating. It's all about arming people with the best tools and techniques so they can be the best human being in the room. And really validate and empower themselves.
Yeah, and for me, like a lot of people, moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting and found out it was a gateway drug to a better career in the entertainment industry. But I attended workshops as an actor, many, many workshops as an actor. And so then when I was on the other side, as a casting assistant, I got an invite to come do a workshop. And I thought, as an actor, fresh off of that side and fresh into the casting world, I was like, in the casting office daily going, oh my God, this all makes sense. Everything people tried to tell me, I now see and I understand better. So maybe I can go and help actors, explain to them that, yes, they're not lying to you. They do want you to be good when you're in the room. Casting people don't hate you. They love you, and they are hoping you will succeed. If for no other reason, then they get to go home and spend time with their family. They can, once you book the role, you've saved us, having to keep looking for it. But for me, it was always about trying to help others, take that journey to make themselves a better actor and try and we always say demystify the process. That sounds a little frou-frou for me, but it really is it to, meet somebody and see, who they are, that they're a real person. They're not the boogeyman. And, we're all in this together. It's it's an artistic collaborative effort. And I just wish actors would realize that they truly have, that none of us have any power in Hollywood, but actors have much more power than they think they have.
Mm-hmm. Collaborative, I think, is the key word there. Whenever I go into an audition, I try to remember I am a creative person collaborating with another creative person. And if it jives, great. If it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be next.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of us forget that. We go in and oh my God, there's this terrifying person. So I love that, each one of you guys sitting like, look, I do this because it makes my job easier, because it's a great way to give back. I've been there. I've been in your shoes as an actor, and it is terrifying sometimes. And so here's a way to make it easier. Love that. Carolina, I know you've got to go. Thank you so much for joining this call.
Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the conversation. Talk to you later.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye-bye, Carol.
So I want to get back to, we talked a little bit about the Actors Key's efforts to change their practices and some of the kind of stuff that happened there. And I liked Actors Key. I'd been to a bunch of these workshop organizations before, and some weren't so great. Actors Key was one of the fantastic, best ones. So can we talk a little bit more about exactly what was happening? You said they were in the city of Burbank, so that was hopefully going to be a technicality that would help them out, but it didn't.
Correct. And, it's... I mean, they are. They are licensed and located in the city of Burbank, but the city attorney's office has made their reason why they think that they have jurisdiction outside the city of Los Angeles, which was basically the gist of their argument was that James Runcorn was sitting in his apartment in Los Angeles and on the internet purchased the workshop, which means, per the judge's ruling, if James Runcorn had purchased a workshop in New York City, Mark Lambert could have prosecuted them if he chose to, or just San Francisco or San Diego, Chicago, anywhere in the world, per the judge's ruling, the city of Los Angeles now has jurisdiction. And talk about overreach of power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You say in the bullet point notes that you shared that let's see here. They gave Mark a tour. I'm not sorry, not Mark. James a tour of the.
No, there's a guy, Frank. His name's Frank Capitillo.
Okay.
And he is an investigator for the city.
Okay.
And it was Frank Capitillo that this was last year. It was, believe it or not, after Runcorn had done his video surveillance, letters went out from Mark Lambert to various casting people who later ended up being charged. And the letters said, we're doing an investigation. We'd like you to come down to City Hall. And, it was the old 80s cop thing of you should get in front of this and come down and talk to us. And per advice from a lawyer that the Teamsters were kind enough to provide at the time, none of them went down and talked to him because the idea was whatever we say, they're going to distort. So they all declined this invitation. But Actors Key, they said, bring your investigator in. We want to show you how we run our business. We want to show you what we do. We'd like to answer any questions you have. And we would like you to tell us anything you see that we should change. And we are open to making that change. And they were met with silence to all of their requests, all of their emails for help. The only response they got was charges that led to their bankruptcy.
So there was no gray area whatsoever.
There was no assistance from the city. You would think the government, rather than just
correct anything, they just attacked.
There's no, here's what you could change, here's what you could do. It's here, come to court and let us drain you and put you out of business.
And that's exactly what happened. They just bankrupted them, basically.
And how many actors are out money that they had on account with Actors Key because of the city? Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the evidence. You talked about James Runcorn having video surveillance, which is of questionable legal thing. But you said the not a job disclaimer, which is sort of a standard sort of opening for each of these workshops. The casting director says this does not guarantee employment. This is not a job interview. Can we start with that and then talk about some of the evidence that was presented as a case against the workshops?
In sitting in court and just kind of overhearing, different conversations, what we've gathered is that the city's case depends on a few things. And the first thing is that they're saying the not a job disclaimer was read, but it wasn't read by the casting professional. And that just seems like splitting hairs. And it's crazy because the disclaimer is not even part of the labor code. There's nothing in the labor code that, dictates what you have to say. But it is part of the California workshop guidelines, which have been around since early 2000. I don't even know what the right word is. I just get flummoxed by all of this because it just seems so nitpicky. And like you said, I'm trying to figure out where Mark Lambert's coming from. What good thing does he think he's doing, that makes him think he's a champion of actors? If you see the photo of him that the Hollywood Reporter ran, he's standing in the halls of justice looking like he's Superman. So I know that's how he sees himself, but I can't for the life of me, with all of the information I have, put myself into his headspace and figure out what he's thinking that makes him think this is the best way to help actors.
Alan, I've been wanting to talk about the press side of things because I think it's an important aspect to this whole thing. And you just mentioned, the picture of him in the Hollywood Reporter. I know that for the most part, this most recent upheaval, if you will, began with an article that was run in the Hollywood Reporter, and I know that the press and the media coverage on the issue has actually played a part, almost like in our national politics. It's had its role in this sort of drama. Can you talk about a little bit about what that role has been and how it's kind of impacted the state of things and the trial itself?
Yes, I will be glad to. First, let me just give you a couple of facts, which is James Runcorn's first undercover video, investigation was February 8th, 2016. Gary Baum's first article, which was his big expose, was published March 30th, 2016. So for him to claim that he's the reason behind this investigation is not, warranted by the dates. Now, if you read the article,
exposure probably is.
Yeah, well, what he's doing, what the Hollywood Reporter's doing, is they're fanning the flames. They're pouring gasoline. They are, basically cheering as, I'm going to get very hyperbolic here. They're cheering as Christians are fed to lions, and they're going to come after me for this statement. But it was the Hollywood Reporter that was part of the Red Scare in the 50s outing communists. So it does not surprise me that their journalism would continue to create stuff and constantly out people to try and build up circulation and readers. Because I've got a list that's just crazy with what they had done. They April of 2016, Greg Orson, a very respected casting director, worked on Vampire Diaries and a number of other shows that people have heard of. He had a death in the family that caused him to cancel a workshop. And that is mentioned in the 6th paragraph of Gary Baum's article, after he spent 5 paragraphs explaining how he's the reason, Gary Baum's the reason, and his reporting is the reason that Greg Orson canceled this workshop. So again, it makes me livid, because it's another example of somebody else using the death of a family member to make themselves look good. With Marcy Liroff, who's a CSA board member and part of their workshop committee. And
she's been a guest on the podcast before too, Alan. We're close with Marcy, yeah.
So a respected member of the casting community. So late June of 2016, Gary Baum writes an article. He quotes Marcy Liroff, not because he talked to her, but because Asia Ray Coleman, who runs Acting Resource Guru, used to be called Workshop Guru, and Marcy talked to Asia Ray. Asia Ray put together a memo of the conversation, handed it out to workshop owners, and one of them, the lady that runs Acting Up Network, handed it to somebody that handed it to Gary Baum. And so Gary Baum's journalistic ethics, or I don't know where he learned to be a journalist, but he's quoting somebody off a hearsay. That's insane to me. What is he doing? And if you look at the timeline, based off of going through the articles and putting this together, May 2015, Gary Baum interviewed James Runcorn. November 2015, Gary Baum interviews Mark Lambert. February 8th of 2016 is when Runcorn goes undercover, and March 30th of 2016 is when Gary Baum writes his first big article. And if you read the later articles, he says James Runcorn's the only actor that would go on the record with him, yet somehow James Runcorn's not in that initial article. It's just...
And it's strange that no other actor has ever come forward.
Yeah.
Even anonymously.
So I don't know what to make of all that. I know it's I have
But
this
in speaking of these conspiracies, I just got a flash on my phone saying that Steve Bannon is out of the White House.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, it's funny Jen says conspiracies, because I do have this worry in my mind that people will hear me and they'll envision me in a basement with news clippings, with string going everywhere. But that's why I try to stick to the facts as much as possible. And those dates, I've got articles and other things that back up those facts. And, your listeners and everybody else can draw their conclusions from that timeline.
Yeah. I was just going to say it's tough because that's all that really, it's just conclusions that can be drawn, right? You can't really, none of what we just discussed is sort of, has any, legal weight, does it? Like it's not like something you can, use as a defense.
No. And it's with what the Hollywood Reporter has done is, they have basically painted everybody as guilty before they've had a trial. They've maligned many people's good names, Greg Orson and Marcy Liroff just being a couple of them, and all I can tell is their motivation is to sell papers. I just don't understand. I really just don't understand. But I imagine after this airs, Gary will be kind enough to write an article explaining to me how I'm wrong.
I want to be mindful of time because I know we all have to busy stuff to kind of get towards. I know you guys are probably in the middle of casting several projects, but I want to just segue off that last bit and talk about why it's not a crime. And we sort of touched on this when we talked about motivation for teaching workshops, but why is it not? Like, why is the city just so completely wrong on this, and it's not a crime to be facilitating these workshops?
Well, one, they're educational, they're training, and I always get trying to figure out how they get misperceived as a crime. And I think there's a couple of things. One is everything an actor does is also a networking opportunity. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The slogan for our podcast is build relationships, not networks. But the idea being that absolutely you've got nobody gets anywhere alone.
Yeah. So since everything an actor does is relationship building, networking, at least in some part or parcel, so we say these are talent and educational, which they are, but then everybody can go, well, they're also networking. The actors also want something. And I say, duh, that's true of everything an actor does. If I go see a play and there's an actor in the audience also seeing the play, they're going to maybe see me in the lobby at intermission and network. Duh, So I think that's part of it is the networking or relationship building component of every actor's life has been magnified because everybody can understand that that's part of the job, and it's eclipsed somehow the educational and the training aspects of the workshops. The other, I would say, and it's back to what you said at the beginning, and I had these as well when I attended workshops, but they're those that you would go to, and the casting person, it was a drive-by, I called it. They couldn't seem to care less, as you say, and they were just in and out. I would argue that's not a crime. That's just incompetence. That's not doing a good job. And there are plenty of incompetent people that somehow work in this world. But it's not criminal. It's something you should be fired for. It's something you should not be asked back again. And if I want to go even further with it, is I'm sure you've had actual auditions where you may have felt the casting director could have cared less. So in that regard, that workshop opportunity gave you the experience and the training to prepare for a real world situation where you went in and did your best and your ego was on the line and the person couldn't care less, and you still had to hold on to your ego and know you did a good job, and it wasn't you, it was them. Because that's, it's one of the hardest parts I think about being an actor is there are some people that are uncaring But then there's others that just get busy or stressed or something else. And actors, when they come in for an audition, are very open and vulnerable. Otherwise, they're not doing the job right. And in that state, these little things that you guys pick up on, you a lot of the times think it applies to you when it doesn't. You know, I worked with one guy one time, and his dog had died that morning. And I imagine he was in a bad mood the whole day. And I would imagine most of the actors that came in and read assumed he hated them. They didn't know what had happened. So it's if there was a casting person that said, hey, give me $50, I'll give you an audition, I will be the first one in line to help you guys, you know, with the pitchforks and the torches. They should be run out of town. But that's not what happened.
That is not the case, yeah.
It's conjecture, it's speculation, it's a city attorney's office, which I would hope is very well versed in the law, but they are not versed in show business or acting. And I would say, you know, legal learning does not equate to acting.
You know, the other part of the crime, in quotes, is the taking of the actors' pictures so that you can, in a workshop situation, you can look at their pictures and then you have to give them back. Well, if I'm not in the middle of casting anything, but there are some people that I thought were really interesting who I'd like to know who they are, what is the crime in holding on to an actor's picture that at some point I may be able to bring them in if I am working on a project that they're appropriate for? What is that crime about?
Yeah, because we know the name of the person that's in the class.
Yeah, I keep the little list with my notes about the actors, but I don't. We could easily
go to Breakdown and print out a headshot and resume. You know, I have a publicly posted email address. I'll be glad to say it right now. It's postcard@alanhooper.com, and it allows any actor in the world to send me anything. And you know, it's asinine to me that an actor sitting in a workshop with a smartphone can email me their picture and resume, but the city says they can't hand me a hard copy.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the same thing. You know, inevitably actors will ask me how they can stay in touch even after I've announced that I'm pretty much retired and not working on anything. And I also have on my IMDb page is my email. And I always say, if you're working on something, if you want to have me tune in a TV show, send it to me. I'm not going to become your pen pal, but let me know, and if I can, I will.
If you guys could summarize this entire situation and your stance on it in just one or two sentences, what would those one or two sentences be?
Well, for me, this has been a really unfair nightmare for those who are involved. And I think that the effect that it's had on the town in general and the people that participate in workshops has been really tragic.
Yeah, to me, it's all about choice. You know, who's going to decide what is legitimate? Is it going to be the paying customer, the actor, or is it going to be 5 people at City Hall? You know, and I know you guys have discussed this before. It's like actors' equity. Who decided the 99-seat waiver should be done away with? Was it the members of equity, or was it a small panel of people that thought they knew better than the overwhelming number of the membership that wanted it to stay? So that's what it's about. You know, it's really about what kind of country do we live in? Do we live in one where the citizens decide what is best for them and how they live their lives and how they spend their money, or are there 5 people appointed to tell us all how to live our lives?
That's powerful to think about it that way. I hadn't thought about it in that context previously. I just want to ask you guys 2 more things before we let you go. Number 1, I want to talk quickly about this casting director defense fund that it looks like Jeremy sent a link over. Can you tell us about that?
Well, because the everybody is spending so much money, and these people are largely unemployed at this point because it's harder for them to get a job because there is now an onus on who they are. We set up a defense fund to help defray some of the costs that some of the people involved are experiencing. And it's really would be a great thing for any of your listeners who have an extra $5, $10, $100 to support the people who have been so harmed by this.
Yeah, it's on generosity.com. And it's, if you search Generosity Casting Defense Fund, it will come up as the first listing. And Jason Kennedy spearheaded this. He's co-casting director with Susan Bluestein on the NCIS shows. And he put it together to help his fellow casting people. And it's raised over $30,000, but divided by 18, it helps. But there's a lot more that could be done. But he has stepped forward greatly in trying to help those in need. And so my hat's always off to him for sticking his neck out there, because he's been attacked for putting together that defense fund. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes of this episode for anybody listening who'd like to check it out and kick a few dollars to some of the people that have been more adversely affected by this. Before we let you guys go, I definitely want to take advantage of your wisdom and experience. This is one of the questions we ask all our guests to respond to right before we end the show or the episode. But I want to ask you guys, if you could, this situation notwithstanding, just in a general sort of life context, if you could impart one nugget of wisdom or knowledge to an actor or to somebody else walking this human path alongside you, what would that one nugget of knowledge or wisdom be?
Be true to yourself. It's, you can't please anybody else. You have to follow your own path and do it as vigorously as you can. But the only person to please is yourself. And you can only do that by being your true self.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would give a technical piece of advice, which is get the words right.
Speech, I pray thee.
Yeah, because I primarily work on comedies, and every time the actor changes the words, it diminishes their good work every time. And I get there's situations where people are asked to improvise, there's situations where they're asked to be loose with the script, but to me the default should be do the words exactly as written. They were written that way for a reason. Do you add well, so, like, to Shakespeare? Do you tell David Mamet you're going to add a button to his scene? Get the words right. And you'd be amazed at how many actors don't. And I see it every day, that it just diminishes, like I said, it diminishes their good work. And so if you guys could just pay a little more attention to the script, don't worry about being off book. Hold the page in your hand. It's your stage manager letting you call for line. That's off book is great advice, but it's been taken too far in auditions.
Yeah, I've worked with enough writers to know that sometimes it is that smallest thing, one word in that sentence that they slaved over for hours to decide whether or not it was the right word. And then you have somebody come in and completely gloss over it. It's like, ooh, what are you doing? You're caught. Like, don't do that.
Especially in comedy, there's a rhythm to comedy, and the words do really make an enormous difference in the timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we worked on a play, and they just changed one letter. A couple of actors changed one letter, and it changed the meaning, because it was supposed to be those people, and they said these people. Mm-hmm. And there's a big connotation difference between those two.
Yeah. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you both for that, because, I was thinking, and I meant to say this in the beginning of the call, it would be lovely to have all of you back on as guests talking about, perhaps some more fun things, or actually getting your wisdom and experience that you would actually bring into a casting office. But as we wrap up, we usually ask people, how can people find out more about you? Like, are you on Twitter and those kinds of things? But instead, I'm going to switch it up and just say, in addition to the Casting Defense Fund that we mentioned, what other action steps or what else can people do to kind of support in this situation? I know Jeremy was saying something about, contacting the mayor's office or the LA City Attorney's office. I'm not sure what he said exactly, but what are some other things that actors, our listeners, et cetera, who feel impassioned by what's going on can actually do as far as concrete action steps?
I would say there's two things they can do. A number of actors have written letters of support to the casting people, and it helps them emotionally to read those letters of people that support them and stand with them. And for those that may not have the financial means to help out, and I get that that's kind of the actor's life, the letter, it really does help them emotionally. And the other thing every actor can do is call the Screen Actors Guild and go, we hear actors are being subpoenaed by the city. What? We hear, we valued workshops. We thought workshops were great for us. What are you guys doing to help with this? And I'm alluding to the fact that Duncan Crabtree Ireland, he's general counsel for SAG, actually stood at the press conference when these charges were announced. And he specifically is who actors should contact and go, Duncan, why were you standing there with the city? The membership would like there to be workshops because, and SAG, supports workshops. They do them themselves. And the SAG Foundation's its own nonprofit, but it's still the SAG Foundation. They do workshops. So SAG supports workshops. They just, unfortunately, the optic of him standing there with the city, and all he knew when he stood there with the city was that they were getting people that were scamming actors. Yeah. 6 months later, we know that's not the case. And so, if SAG could come forward and publicly show their support that we know they have for us, it would go a great deal to helping end this and, diminish the delays that the city had been throwing at us.
I second that motion. I think that if actors would just write to the Screen Actors Guild and express their support, it would be enormously helpful.
Okay.
And I also want to thank the two of you for the podcast that you do and the information that you put out there every single podcast. I think it's really an invaluable service.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful to hear, and thank you guys for your time. Really, really excited to get this out to the community, and just like as we said before, keep people empowered, informed, on point, on their A game, going out and just creating an industry that's going to be beneficial for everybody. That really is, as you said, Alan, in the hands of actors. We have more power, I think, than a lot of us realize, and that this has been a great reminder of that. So thank you again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed part 2 of 2. That's the second and final part of our casting workshop roundtable with Carolyn, Alan, and Jane. And again, I want to thank them for their time, for their candidness, for kind of, I don't know, I mean, it's not easy to take a stand in this world and stand up for what you believe in. And I'm just grateful that they were willing to do this on the air and share this side of the story with actors. Now, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, whether you believe what they're saying is the truth or not, just take it all and, make your own opinion. Do your own research, do your own homework, and go with your gut. That's all that we've ever really wanted to empower actors to do, is just to put good stuff out there and just show people that there's a million different ways to get from point A to point B. And the best and fastest way is usually the way that is not only the simplest, but also the one that agrees with your sense of morality, your sense of rightness, whatever it is that you have inside of you. And it's going to be different. There are going to be people that are going to think the opposite is the best. So, do your thing. You do you. But thank you for listening. And again, Carolyn, Jane, and Alan, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your take and everything that you have learned and gone through and everything that you're fighting for in this issue going forward. As I mentioned before, we're going to have a rebuttal from a very well-respected and much-loved past guest next episode, and then we are going to be moving on from this issue and getting back to the art and the practice of making art and making a living with that art. So Stay tuned for that next episode. So many great interviews in the pipeline. We're excited to bring you guys so many. Picks of the week, we're going to shelve until next week when AJ is back with us. So that is it for episode 288, which was produced and hosted by me, Trevor Algatt, and you heard AJ earlier. Jen Levin is our production coordinator, Gadali Gubrek is our marketing and web director, Deborah Smith is our community manager, and Grace Gordon is our director of public relations. Fern Lim designed our logo, and Trevor Algatt, that's me, edited and mixed today's episode and composed the theme and interview music. You can sign up for our weekly email dispatch and listen to all of our episodes over at our website, insideacting.net. You can also find us on social media and pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've got a minute, leaving us a review on iTunes is a great way to not only help us out, but help other people find the show. There's a lot of weird algorithms and ranking systems that go into podcast visibility on the iTunes store, and your reviews help so much. So please, if you've got a moment and you enjoy the show and you're not in a place to financially contribute, but you want to share the love, leaving us a review helps a lot. Big thanks to our sponsors, Rehearsal Pro and VO2GoGo, the award-winning voiceover training system and winner of Backstage's Reader's Choice Award for Best Voiceover Training 4 years in a row. Don't forget, you can visit vo2gogo.com/start to get access to a free Getting Started in VoiceOver online class that'll help you add voiceover to your acting portfolio. That's vo2gogo.com/start. And thanks to you guys, our listeners. You can visit our website and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, get links to everything we've talked about in this episode and in all our episodes. And if you'd like, that's where you can also support the continued production of the show with either a one-time financial contribution or an ongoing contribution as part of our membership. Just visit us at insideacting.net to learn more and to show us some love. And that does it for episode 288 of Inside Acting. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, follow your gut.